After discovering that my wife was cheating on me, I planned the perfect revenge, and made her witness the whole thing. I carefully navigated my way through London's evening rush hour to the Marriott Hotel. My mind kept replaying what was about to happen and the consequences. Whatever happened tonight, at least 3 lives would be changed forever. My name is Salvatore, short for Salvador, and I have Italian roots. My parents moved to the UK in the late 1960s and opened an Italian restaurant. It was the cornerstone of our close-knit family. Although we no longer live together, family gatherings are always packed, and missing one person means enduring my grandmother's disapproving glare. 7 years ago, I married Connie, and although our relationship is happy, it lacks the foundation for long-term development. My grandmother never liked Connie and always looked at her with distrust, warning me to be careful. A month ago, as I drove through the dense traffic of London, her words echoed in my mind. I discovered that Connie had been cheating on me for the past 6 months. When I found out that she had left a hotel pen in her wallet, this insignificant mistake led me to discover her infidelity. I decided to investigate discreetly. We often met with our friends Carlo, Johanna, Phil and Terry at my cousin Carlo's cozy restaurant. Carlo was like a brother to me, with a colorful past, but always friendly and protective. His wife Johanna was lively and the only person he was afraid of. Our evenings are usually pleasant, but tonight everything feels different. I walked to the hotel, knowing the truth about Connie, the effects of radiation. I met Phil at work, and we hit it off immediately. We're about the same age and have similar views on life. We play golf together occasionally, and often hang out at the golf club with his wife Terry. Terry gets along well with Connie and often goes shopping together. Phil is always warm and friendly, but Terry can be standoffish, especially recently, when she suddenly came back to normal and rejoined us. I mentioned this to Connie, but she thinks it's just a woman thing. One evening, we were having cocktails in the lounge when Carlo and Johanna arrived. We greeted them warmly and the waiter brought us fresh drinks. I'm always impressed by the excellent service we enjoy. My cousin had reserved our usual corner table, tucked away but facing the door, as Carlo insisted, and we didn't argue. Joanna asked Connie, with whom I'd spoken earlier, that they would definitely come but might be a little late as Phil hadn't come home yet. Carlo glanced at the women and then at me, shook his head slightly, and I decided to ask him later. Phil and Terry arrived looking a little under the weather, and Carlo stared at them expressionlessly. The mood was a little off. We sat down and talked about work and family. After lunch, we moved to the lounge. The girls danced, sipped cocktails and talked about sports. When the music slowed down, we joined them on the dance floor. Connie pressed herself against me, hinting that there was more to come later. Carlo and Johanna went back to the table, but Phil and Terry seemed stiff. Are they okay? I whispered to Connie. Yes, I think so, but Terry didn't say anything. Connie tried to distract me as we walked back to the table. Carlo smiled at me, and Johanna giggled. Phil and Terry came back, and Terry quickly went to the bathroom, leading the other women after him. Is everything okay? Phil Carlo asked coldly. Yes, of course there are no problems, but his body language suggested otherwise. When the women returned, Terry's body language betrayed her. Connie's eyes confirmed my suspicions. We tried to ignore the tension. Carlo touched me, winked, he knew something. After a few more dances, my cousin called a taxi. I noticed Connie and Phil talking animatedly. That was another strange thing about the evening. Sue left with Phil and Terry. I asked Connie point blank. They were fine, she said, smiling out the window. I felt something was wrong, but decided to talk to Carlo the next morning. That night, Connie was unusually affectionate, and expressed her love for me. I love you too, baby. Never forget that you are my wife and no one can take you away from me, and I will never give you a reason to. I hugged her tightly and kissed her until we fell asleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, recalling the strange events of the evening. I should have called Carlo earlier. Connie had gone to the gym early. I drank glass after glass of orange juice to clear my head. I used the pen from her purse to search for the hotel name on Google. It was located in the posh district of London, with easy parking. I wrote down the contact details, but couldn't find any online booking records. The records had been deleted. I became suspicious and called Carlo. Carlo, what happened to Phil and Terry? Should I be worried? It seems you know something. I spoke with a concerned tone. Meet me at my brother's bar this afternoon. I'll tell you in person, not over the phone, Carlo responded, with a serious tone. Of course I'll be there. I agreed quickly. Okay, he added, making the situation seem even more serious. Yes, I understand, I answered, feeling a lump in my stomach. The phone hung up and I felt doom approaching. I sat there staring at the phone, anxiety churning in my stomach. An hour later, Khan walked in, looking well exercised. Good workout, I asked, trying to sound casual. Yes, it was good. I needed it, she said, throwing her purse and gym bag aside. I'm going to see Carlo. He wants to talk about something, but it won't take long. I told her, trying to hide my nervousness. What does he want? He still creeps me out, she replied, with a hint of distrust in her voice. He's a nice guy, but don't underestimate him. I won't be long. Okay, I assured her, although I wasn't sure myself whether to believe it. Connie gave me a look I couldn't read. I drove slowly to Carlo's bar, a trendy but inconspicuous place. Carlo opened the door to see if I was being followed. It's okay. Carlo, what's wrong? Your phone call worried me. I didn't know what to think. As soon as I saw him, I said, look me in the eye and say, come with me. We went to the back office. He closed the door and we sat down. To me, you are like family. I promised your father I would always look after you. What I have to tell you will hurt, but you need to hear it. Carlo began. Pain shone in his eyes. My heart raced. I sensed this had something to do with my wife. Carlo handed me a large envelope from the table. I knew what was inside would change my life. I asked him, is it bad? My voice was almost a whisper. He nodded, his eyes full of sympathy. He said, I'm here with you. Okay. He raised his hand, and I took the envelope and opened it. Inside was a photo of my wife and another man in a cheap hotel room and bed. Tears blurred my vision as I looked at the photo. Carlo, how do you know who he is? I asked, shocked and angry. I had heard rumors about Connie a few weeks ago, but there had been no proof until recently. A friend had seen her with this man in South London, and they were walking so close together that he recognized her. Carlo explained. Who is he? Tony Drew. I tried to digest the information. Phil Drew's brother, you must know him, Carlo replied. I was stunned, because all the pieces were falling into place. Phil, Connie, Terry. I found a pen in a London hotel. I asked there, hoping to get more details. Yes, I'm sorry, but my people followed them last week when you weren't home. You weren't home when we first met, Carlo continued. I clenched my fists. I'm going to get rid of that bastard. I growled, my anger boiling over. It's easy. Not worth it. Divorce her and let me deal with him, Carlo suggested. No, Carlo. I have to deal with it myself. He needs to know it was me. You know where he is, where he lives, where he works. I insist that all the information is in the envelope. Don't do anything rash, we need to plan carefully. He's divorced, no children, but he likes married women. He regrets his affair with your wife. Carlos's eyes grow cold as he says this. What's your plan? I ask, trying to calm myself down. He pours me a whiskey. How did you get on with Phil? He seemed to have got separated from Terry and your wife in the restaurant. I think he knows what happened. Can you still call him your friend? Carlo asked. I want to know if his wife was involved too. Carlo continued, we need to act quickly, but first we need to see a lawyer. Do you want to try to make up with her? If this was an isolated incident, maybe, but seeing this, I can't forgive or forget. I need to think about it, Carlo. I hope they both suffer. I said, and the idea of revenge came to mind. He handed me a business card, a divorce lawyer. He's ruthless. I've briefed him on your situation. Call him, he'll take care of it. He'll take care of it, and he's my cousin. He laughed, and I smiled weakly. We planned our next move, for an hour. I called my cousin Carlo, and he sprang into action. We agreed to wait until everything was ready. I needed to find out how involved Phil and Terry were. I drove home, my mind racing. When I arrived, the house was quiet. Connie wasn't there. There was a note on the kitchen table that said, "I'll see Terry later, love you." I crumpled it up and threw it away. I called Caro, who said she'd gone to see Terry, but I knew she was with Phil, and our friend was watching her. Carlo told me on the phone, "Okay, where is Terry? If anything happens, please let me know." Connie came back 3 hours later. "Hey, honey, how was your day?" I asked, and she rushed into the house, kissed me on the cheek, and walked towards the kitchen. "Nothing, Carlo and I were making plans," she answered, waiting for more details. I didn't provide any details. It was between cousins. He thought his wife was cheating on him and needed my advice. I smiled and explained, as I noticed her trying to hide an involuntary smile. "I'm sure everything will be fine." She looked away, a little upset, and remained like that for the rest of the weekend. I couldn't bring myself to have physical contact with her, because Carlo had shown me the images of her and Tony, and she was even better at lying and acting than I had imagined. On Sunday evening, she came over, clearly looking for some fun. "I hope we can be together tonight. I know you're busy, but I need you now," she said, sobbing. We made love, but afterwards she looked shocked. "What's wrong?" "We've never done this before," she said. "I just want to make sure you're mine. I love you, Connie, I don't want to lose you." I replied, my heart heavy. "You're not going to lose me, silly." She laughed, but her words stung. Her and Tony's. The words burned in my mind as we lay quietly, each of us thinking our own thoughts. When she fell asleep, I quietly got out of bed, went downstairs and poured a large glass of JD, checked my computer and found a message from Carlo. "As we discussed, everything is going well. I think what needs to be done now is to arrange the sleepover on Wednesday." I sent him a text back, "Okay." An hour later, I crawled back into bed, but couldn't sleep. In the end, I fell asleep in a daze, only getting a few hours rest and even less in the morning. I showered and went downstairs. Connie greeted me with a smile, breakfast, coffee and toast. She moved carefully, noticing my gaze. "You were a little wild last night, honey. I don't think I'm ready for another round in a few days." She kissed me again. "It's okay." I coughed and smiled. She sipped her coffee. "Do you mind if I go away for a few days on Wednesday?" she asked. "Just for one night?" I asked. "Yes, but I won't be back until Thursday night," she explained. "Was this about Carlo?" she asked. "Yes, it's that cousin I mentioned. He might need some support." I lied. "Carlo creeps me out. I don't know what support he can offer." "You might be surprised," she said shakily, "but you don't want to be his enemy." I warned her. She went pale, but I knew she was still planning something. I looked at the clock and got up to leave. "I've got to go, darling. Be good." I kissed her forehead and left. I met with my lawyer and spent an hour discussing the options and signing the documents. He confirmed that everything would be ready by Wednesday afternoon. I transferred all the money from our savings account to a new account in my name and sent Carlo a large sum of money. I emptied our safe and opened a new account at another bank. I stopped giving her pocket money because she knew she would be in trouble at the end of the month. I went to the office satisfied with the day's business. My secretary was devastated. She had helped me so much, and I knew she could handle things on her own. I noticed her worried gaze, sighed, and turned to face her. I had known her for almost 5 years, and she had always been professional and extremely loyal. She was polite to Connie, but the atmosphere was a little tense. I was sure Connie had mentioned her attitude, but I always ignored it, pretending to care about her, gazing into her blue eyes. I knew I had to say something. My insides was churning. She could tell. I took a deep breath, trying to clear my thoughts and control my emotions. There may be an interruption this week. If I'm not here, you know how to keep things running." "Okay," I said, "boss, what can I do to help?" she asked, sensing my distress. Connie was playing with me. I admit it, I can't hold back anymore. "You're kidding, God, this is terrible, you sure?" she exclaimed, her eyes wide with shock. I nodded slowly, and when she saw my tears, she closed the door, hugged me tightly and stood beside me. I felt the love I had been missing at home. For the first time since I found out, I cried, and she held me until I pulled myself together. She took my face in her hands, looked me in the eye and reassured me, "You're a good person, don't let anyone tell you otherwise." "What are you going to do?" Sadie asked, her voice full of concern and support. "Divorce and then deal with that bastard." I said firmly, "I understand, but be careful. Don't do anything stupid." She admonished Sadie, who was made of gold, and who handled everything perfectly, leaving her husband very lucky at home. Connie and I were watching TV when the phone rang. She took the call in the hallway and after 5 minutes of whispering, she came back. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Oh, nothing, just Terry and Phil fighting again, it's driving me crazy," she answered. "Are they in trouble?" Phil never mentioned it. I observed her expression, trying to find clues in it. "I think it's nothing, they'll work it out," she replied, trying to act nonchalant. I asked Connie what was really going on in the dining room. Connie looked nervous, she didn't know I'd noticed something was wrong between them. "Yes, they had a fight before going out," she admitted. "What are you and Phil up to?" I pressed. She flinched. "Terry asked me to talk to Phil." "What was that about?" "About Connie, maybe I can help." I suggested that it was okay, I'm sure they've sorted it out by now. She said dismissively, "Great. I don't want to see my friend's marriage fall apart." "He hasn't cheated, has he?" I pressed on. No, nothing like that," she replied, her face flushing, "so this is Terry being self-deceptive." I asked suspiciously, "You see, I don't know, leave us alone." She huffed, "I thought so." "I think so too, but I'll mention it to Phil when I see him, about it." I finished and looked back at the TV again, her eyes narrowed. A few minutes later, I asked casually why Phil wanted you to talk to him if neither of them had cheated. She got up angrily and ran out of the room. I sat back down, realizing that I had annoyed her. The next day, I decided to go and disturb Phil and Terry. The next day was Tuesday, and I had just left the house when Connie came downstairs. I kissed her cheek. "I can't hold back my love. I need to act." "I love you," I said. Connie looked at me in confusion as I disappeared. Hearing my car accelerate and drive away, she poured herself a cup of coffee and thought about Tony. Everything had been going so well until she met Tony last week. A few months ago, she had gone out with Terry. They were with friends in a club. When he walked in and saw his sister-in-law, he walked up to them and offered them a drink. The girls smiled at the handsome guy. Terry noticed that Tony and Connie locked eyes and that there seemed to be a spark between the two of them. "Stay away from Tony, he's a loser, he even made a move on me. He goes after anyone, especially married ones," Terry warned. "Don't worry, Terry, I've got my own, but he's smooth and good-looking." "Aren't you tempted?" Connie asked. Terry shook her head. "One word, don't," Terry advised. She didn't like the look in her friend's eyes. The next few evenings were quiet, but Tony gave Connie his phone number. Tony called her, flirted and chatted, and at the next party, Connie knew Tony would be there, and they danced, Tony seducing her with flattery and touches. Terry grabbed Connie by the elbow, and she realized she'd spent the whole evening with Tony. Terry scolds her, but Connie shrugs it off, claiming nothing bad happened. Tony was confident that he would get Connie sooner or later. Over the next few weeks, their phone calls and flirting became more frequent. When Terry cancelled a night out, Tony persuaded Connie to meet him alone. She agreed quickly, dressed as usual, but feeling different. They had a passionate night together, and Tony drove her to the Marriott Hotel. She panicked when she saw the time and hurriedly got dressed, asking Tony to take her home. She texted that she was waiting for a taxi and was terrified but asleep. When she got home, she hoped that everything would be okay. For the next few weeks, Connie continued to date Tony, sometimes going out at night and sometimes during the day. During a trip to she spent the night in a hotel with Tony. Terry guessed Connie's intentions and warned her to stop dating so as not to be discovered. She quarreled with her husband Phil and asked him to urge Tony to stop dating. Tony is dismissive, while Phil is torn between loyalty to his brother and his feelings for Connie is furious when Phil asks her to stop seeing Tony. The harder it is to end it, the less serious the problem. Connie knows it has to end soon, but finds the risk exciting. She decides tomorrow will be the last time, but still needs to convince Tony. It's late when I walk in the door. I've been going through the assets all day and the plan is set. The lawyer's documents are in my car, and the official document package will be sent by registered mail. I feel nervous and pour a large glass of JD. Connie looks at me as I take a big sip and pour another glass. I'm distracted, and Connie can tell. She asks me, "Are you okay?" I take another sip of JD and turn to face her. She looks scared and worried. What a terrible day. I need a shower before I can prepare for tomorrow's talk with Carlo. I walked past her and went upstairs without kissing her. She didn't like the tension and didn't understand what I meant by preparing for tomorrow. I stood under the hot shower and tears flowed down my face. My marriage, my wife, my whole life is a mess. After 30 minutes, I feel no better. My heart is broken. I dry off, get dressed, and go downstairs. Connie notices my expression and seems to relax a little. What's for dinner? I ask casually. Order something, I don't feel like cooking. Chinese is fine. Sounds good. We avoid conflict as we wait for the food in the living room. Dinner is quiet, the atmosphere almost a little tense. What time do you leave in the morning? She asks casually. Around 9 o'clock. I have a 11 o'clock flight, so I'm not in a hurry. I'm so happy to finally meet my cousin Carlo. It's almost 10 o'clock in the evening, and she glances at her watch. I have a busy day tomorrow, so I need to get some sleep. I finish the water in my glass, set it down, and look at her. She closes the door between us, and a flash of sadness crosses her eyes. I've always loved you, Connie. I hug her tightly. She senses my sadness and guilt. Tomorrow it will all be over. I hope I can make it up to you, she thought. I was thinking the same thing. I woke up to the smell of freshly brewed coffee, a smell that always reminded me of my grandmother's house. Connie handed me a large cup, and I kissed her cheek before taking a sip. We drank in silence, both avoiding eye contact, the tension suffocating. I glanced at my watch. I had to go. I had to get the car. Hello, I said, setting down the cup and taking a deep breath and suppressed a sob. Connie was nervous and trying to stay calm. She must have sensed that I knew. Have a safe trip and come back soon, said C. I kissed her forehead politely, then picked up my suitcase, started the car and drove away without looking back. A few minutes later, with tears in her eyes, Connie picked up the phone. He's gone. Are you ready for tonight? Oh yes baby, of course. Phil always makes me nervous, but I told him to back off. Okay, but that won't stop. 45 people in our room, as usual. See you at 8. Okay, I know. I'll call you later. They hung up. The man smiled as he entered the details of the appointment. Carlo looked at the message expressionlessly and then at me. Are you sure you want to do this? Do you know where this ends? Carlos said with concern. Carlos, I love that woman, I will never love her again, I gave her everything, I can't let go, I have to make her realize what she has done, make her pay like her lover, I have to do this, do you understand? Carlos saw the pain in my eyes and felt it in my words. He took a revolver from the table and placed it in front of me. We need a weapon to make your point, Carlos said. I nodded and stared at the weapon. Carlos put a small pile of shell casings on the table and loaded the gun, so you could really feel it in your mind. Carlos urged. I picked up the weapon, recalled the memories, they came flooding back, I loaded the gun easily and then put it down. What next? Carlos asked. I'll eat something and then tell you everything. I might call Terry and Phil and see what they know and why they didn't tell me. I'll leave it alone, Carlos suggested. If you get arrested now, you'll give the police a motive. There'll be plenty of time for that later. We walked to a bar, where Carlo introduced me to his brother Alfredo. Nice to meet you, Alfredo said, shaking my hand. They chatted until the waitress brought their food. She smiled at me and introduced herself, I'm Carlo's niece Alicia, nice to meet you. My uncle has told me a lot about you. She said, Alfredo, it's a pleasure to meet your family. Family is everything. I said, despite the seriousness of our earlier conversation, lunch had passed pleasantly. At around 3 p.m., I felt calm and secure. My phone rang, it was Connie. How are you, Connie? I asked, just calling to say hello. How's Carlo? She asked, we're fine, having lunch. What are your plans for tonight? I asked, testing her. I'm seeing Terry, everything's fine. She lied, her tone even, and said, say hello to Terry for me. I love you. I replied, I love you too. Bye, baby. Connie said before hanging up. When I hung up, Carlo saw the pain and anger in my eyes. Well, Carlo asked with concern. Yes, we're ready. I answered, my voice cold. We toasted and finished the wine. Let's go meet the guys. Carlo said. They found 4 men in a private residence. Carlo introduced them as his loyal friends. These people won't let you down, Carlo assured me. I noticed their cold eyes and felt a chill. More? Carlo asked coldly. Yes, I need it. I confirmed that everything was ready. I asked them if everything had been checked, the car, the van, the evacuation route was ready. One of them replied that the plan had been reviewed until everyone was sure that it was ready. I felt their eyes on me as I paced nervously and angrily. The thought of Connie meeting Tony made me feel unbearable pain. I wanted to hit something. Carlo came up to me and hugged me. We'll be on the road soon, he said, and everything will be fine. He reassured me. Frustration, anger, and betrayal made me shed tears. Carlo stayed by my side, and I felt the support of the men. For the next hour, they talked to me and prepared me mentally. A phone call interrupted us. Carlo answered, and yes, he said, everyone listen carefully. Okay, we'll start in 5 minutes. It was already 8 p.m., and they left to bring the car around. Carlo saw my anxiety and said, this is your last chance, you don't have to do this. I insisted, I want to teach him a lesson he'll never forget. Good for you, said Carlos, patting my shoulder, and we got into the Mercedes-Benz that had been prepared and parked about 200 yards from the hotel, around 9 p.m. Carlos received a text message, they're here. He read it aloud, reading my mind aloud, and kept his hand on my shoulder to keep me calm and remind me to stick to the plan. I nodded, and we had to wait another hour, when another text came saying they were there and in position. Carlo smiled nervously, and we had to be careful going in and out. We went over the plan again, and Carlo reminded me to stay calm and not start a riot over the 2 guys. Okay, he said, his cold eyes meeting mine. I know I can't mess this up. Okay, Carlo, I won't shoot him in the bed, I'm not that stupid. I giggled, and he gave me a light tap on the head. Don't lie to me, this is serious, get a grip. He scolded. We sat in silence until another message popped up, the exit is secure. Carlo looked at the time, it was almost time, his heart beating and breathing faster. He took out his brass knuckles from the glove box and opened the car door. Okay, let's go. We walked with determination towards the hotel. I followed Carlo into the hotel lobby and walked straight to the elevator, trying to act natural but avoiding eye contact. I was so nervous when the elevator arrived that we let a couple go out first and then we got in. We rode in silence to the 4th floor and my heart raced when the elevator arrived at room 415. I knew my wife was in there with another man. 4 men in hotel uniforms appeared pushing a laundry cart, wearing woolly hats and carrying tasers. Carlo pointed out the security cameras that were shielded, and gave us 5 minutes. A man opened the door with a key card, and we quickly crossed the corridor to the bedroom. I saw my wife's underwear thrown on the floor, and my chest tightened. These men entered the bedroom, Tony turned around and the taser shot him, he fell over on Connie with a jerk. These men dragged him to the laundry cart, Connie screamed but was gagged in less than a minute. Tony was dead, Connie was tied up with duct tape. I switched on the overhead light and walked into the room, holding the weapon in my hand. She squirmed and cried. I aimed the weapon at her face to make her feel fear. Carlo watched me closely, fearing that I would crack. I pulled the trigger, but Carlo grabbed my hand and stopped me. Connie was so scared that she wet her pants. Carlo took the weapon, furious but laughing. Connie trembled with fear and shock, tears streaming down her face. I removed my mask, and she gasped, passing out. Carlo checked his phone, it was time to leave. We slipped quietly down the stairs and out the back of the hotel. We drove in silence, each lost in our own thoughts, to the agreed meeting point. You took out the bullets, I took out the gun. I thought you'd lost your mind for a moment. Carlos glared at me, and I grinned. I'm not going to jail for killing her. I just wanted to scare her. She'll understand when she sees Tony. The others will deal with him. There's no need for you to do it. He'll remember. I needed to be sure. We walked through the dark streets and into the bar where Alfredo was waiting. It was almost 1 a.m. He bought us drinks, and we sat by the fireplace as the adrenaline faded and we began to regain our humanity. The pain and anger had clouded my mind for the past few hours. Carlos' phone rang, and he smiled at me and said that it was taken care of and that the brothers were on their way. I was overwhelmed with gratitude and would never forget this night. My voice was a mixture of gratitude and sadness. Shut up, it's over, you have other battles to fight now, go deal with her, you don't have to please me. Carlos responded firmly, of course, I understand. I replied, I remember leaving Connie at the hotel, how will she get home? Will she confess? Have we prepared the room? I suddenly felt exhausted, and Alfredo took me to my room. I collapsed on the bed, unable to sleep, and repeatedly thought back to what had happened tonight, thinking about Connie. I was sad and disgusted with myself. I loved her so much, but now it was all over. I had the divorce papers. She was supposed to send them before I got home. She should know everything I knew, but what if she didn't come home? She might go to Teresa's, I'd better have the papers redirected there. About 7 hours later, Alicia woke me up with coffee. It was already lunchtime. You have 30 minutes. Carlo said there's a plane in the afternoon. Get up. Your clothes are on the dresser. She left. I got dressed and looked in the mirror. I had changed last night. I almost killed a man and watched him walk towards his fate. I felt nothing. No remorse. Tony got what he deserved. I sat at the table with the others, and we ate, talked, and laughed. Soon it was time to leave, and we packed our bags and drove away. I waved to the people watching us leave, and I was comforted by their concern. I promised myself I would be back soon. I drove slowly home, feeling more and more fear. My anger had disappeared, replaced by a hollow ache. I dropped Carlo off at home, and Johanna embraced him like newlyweds. She said, it's okay, just hang on a little longer. It's been too long. Everything will be fine. Tomorrow will be better. Things will be tough for a while, but trust me, everything will be fine. She said it so gently. I couldn't speak, but Carlo gave me a final hug before I went home to face Connie. Call me later. I said. I nodded and drove away, feeling an emptiness like I'd never known before. I opened the door and walked into the house. It was warm, but no longer comfortable. The silence was oppressive. I checked the living room and kitchen. Nothing. It was at 6 o'clock in the morning. Connie should have been home by now, unless she's planning to stay away and try to save our marriage from afar. I checked my phone, no calls, no messages. I slumped into a chair and felt the bitter frustration rise within me. What a fucking anticlimax. I muttered to myself. I looked around and saw Connie's photo. I stormed angrily across the room, threw the photo across the room, the frame pierced the wall, the glass shattered. Fuck you, I shouted, the sound echoing around the empty room as I tried to steady my breathing. The phone rang. I picked it up. Hello? I shouted into the receiver. Is that you? A trembling voice asked. Yes, what is it? I answered angrily. It's Terry. I took a deep breath to try and calm down. Yes, Terry, sorry to disturb you, what can I do for you? Connie, she's here and she's in a terrible state. She doesn't want to go home. She thinks you're going to hurt her. She shouldn't have been driving. Terry says, her voice full of concern. Is she still there? I interrupt her and say, yes, I asked her to speak to you, but she doesn't want to. She's in a terrible state and I'm worried about her. Please be patient and tell her I'll come and get her, I reply firmly. Terry relays my words and I hear Connie screaming in the background. I don't know what to say. Terry sounds pained and says, that's okay, I responded, trying to steady my emotions. What do you mean? Terry asked, confused. I know everything, Terry, she whispered, clearly shocked. I heard her relay my words to Connie, followed by more sobs and screams. Yes, I'm sorry, Terry said, her voice choking up. I know about the girls' night out and that you and Phil had an argument about it. I let out a bitter sound. She gasped. Oh, my God. No. Yes. I know. I'll make sure that guy will pay. I say I'm determined. Phil, I'm sorry. We tried to stop them. We should have told you, but we were in a bad way. Terry says quickly, her voice full of regret. I understand, Terry. Make sure she stays there until I get there. I will. I'll be careful, she replies softly. I'll see you soon. I hang up. I exhale slowly, feeling the anger drain from my body, leaving only emptiness. I've said everything I need to say, but I still feel empty and alone. Maybe she's been gone for a while and I just haven't noticed. I miss her, I hate her, I love her. I replay it all over and over, realizing that I've been blind to all the signs. I'm exhausted, and I know things will only get worse before they get better. I pour a cup of coffee to blank out my thoughts and wait for sleep. I sleep soundly, but wake up with a splitting headache and a dry mouth. I showered, made coffee, drank orange juice straight from the carton and waited for the coffee to brew while the doorbell rang. It was 7:30. Hello? I answered wearily. Is that Carlo? Are you okay? Have you done anything stupid? Carlo's voice was full of concern. I'm fine, just a bit of a headache. She's gone to find Terry and Phil. I told her everything I knew. It's all come out now. I haven't heard from her since last night. I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. Carol laughed, not surprised. Things seemed to be okay. The package had been sent, but I wouldn't hear back for a day or two. The family said hello and said they would get in touch soon. I hung up after saying that, poured myself another cup of coffee and tried to clear my thoughts. I had a lot to do, call the office, the locksmith, the bank. Although I didn't want to lose her, I couldn't continue with her after the betrayal. Just after 9 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. I opened the door and saw Terry and Phil standing there. To apologize. Can we talk? Terry asked. I let them into the living room. They sat on the sofa, and I sat on the sofa's rest area. Okay, what do you want to say? I asked, my tone was cold. We are very sorry. Phil started to say, I'm also very sad, Phil. I'm sorry that my friends didn't tell me that my wife left me for a stranger. I have a lot of regrets, I said, anger surging again. When we tried to make her stop, she was still confused in our place. Something bad had happened. Terry implored. What do you mean? Terry, I asked. My involvement has not been revealed yet, but we don't know. We haven't heard from my brother. Phil said. Connie muttered something about being tied up and left at the hotel. Please, Phil. She should have said more. What did that bastard do to her? I don't care, but if I ever see him again, he'd better regret it. Let him know I warned him. My voice was cold and threatening. Phil and Terry stared at me. My anger, especially Phil's, seemed shaken. How's Connie? She got the papers last night. Yes, I asked. Trying to keep control, yes, she finally calmed down, but when she was fed, she started to make a fuss again. She's frustrated, angry, and scared, but she won't say what happened. Terry explained. Her voice was full of concern. Good. I think maybe now she'll remember every night. Okay, guys, I hate what she's. If she's in pain, fine, she's with that idiot so she can be with him. I'm done with her. I said, my voice full of resolve. They looked at me, at a loss for words in the face of my anger. Can't you two work things out? Terry pleaded, tears welling in her eyes. She made a mistake, but you two are great together. Divorce is a big deal, please talk to her first, she deserves that. Terry's eyes welled with genuine concern. I paused, knowing that I would eventually have to talk to Connie. Okay, I'll talk to her, but first, I want all her stuff moved out, just her and me. I'll call and tell her when and where. Is that okay with you? I stated my terms, and Terry gave me a tight hug, while Phil looked around. This was more than she expected. Yes, thank you, I will tell her you called. Please don't wait too long. Phil said, seriously. Phil looked at me and said, sulkily, this is my brother, a pain in the ass, you should kick his ass. I wouldn't blame you. As they drove away, I looked out the window as they quickly got into their car and drove off towards my soon-to-be ex-wife. I sat back in my seat, thinking about Terry's words. Of course I needed to talk to Connie, but I needed to calm down before I could believe I wouldn't lose control when I faced her. I poured more coffee and savored the rich aroma as it filled another large cup. I picked up my phone and called Sadie. We chatted for half an hour. She talked about her life situation, and we laughed and joked like we used to. In the end, she invited me to her house for dinner with her husband. When I hung up the phone, I felt a little less burdened. The next day, I reorganized the locks, the bedroom, the clothes, the photos, everything I could think of that could be thrown away, packed up or destroyed. In the evening, my anger was still there, but it had eased a little. Emotionally traumatized, I found it easy to shed tears. I realized that I might have left Connie without saying goodbye, but subconsciously I had already decided to abandon her. Everything was ready, all that was left was to have the final showdown. I knew I would be just as hurt as she was. Damn it, I thought, how could you do this to me, to us? I sat in front of the window, thinking about how my marriage had collapsed. My heart ached. Only pain could suppress my anger and control my rage. I know I should call, but as I sip another JD, I decide to wait until morning. I'm too tired to argue with her today. I want to be relaxed when I call. I have another restless dream, and the phone rings early again, just before 7:30 a.m. The ringing wakes me from a half-awake state. Yes, I ask. It's me, Phil. Listen, I just got a call from the hospital. My brother's been there for a few days. The hospital. My brother has been there for a few days. He was badly beaten. He seems stable, but he has broken both arms and both legs. He's in a bad way, that's all I know. I took a deep breath. I hope you don't expect me to feel sorry for him, Phil. As far as I'm concerned, he's lucky he didn't meet me. I'll get the job done, mark my words. If I ever see him again, it won't be for long. I understand if you do see him. I won't blame you. I won't ask any questions. He deserves what he gets. You're a decent man and my friend, and I'm sorry I haven't been the same to you as you have been to me. I know I can't change the past, but I thought you might like to know about Tony. That's all, Phil. It's not your fault. Remember, that's the way things are. Give Terry my love. Goodbye. Thanks. And of course goodbye. I hung up the phone and stared out the window at the garden, which was peaceful, with the occasional flock of birds flying to the bird feeder where I had left food. I sat in the chaise longue and looked at nature through the glass, which always calmed me down and helped me think, and today was no exception. I called Carlo on his mobile and told him the news about Tony. He just grunted, pointing out that the work had been well done, his men had done their jobs and the result was in line with our expectations. When I listed Tony's injuries, he laughed and said they were serious but not life-threatening, unless he did something stupid. Carlo said he could give Tony the appropriate message to behave himself, but I didn't think that was wise. I was sure Phil would convey my feelings better and more safely. We didn't talk about it again, and I continued to look out the window, drinking my second cup of coffee for the day. It rang, but I let the call go to the answering machine. I listened to the message, and heard Connie's hesitant message saying please call me, we need to talk, I'm sorry, I need to explain, I need you, I need to come home, I'm sorry. Between each word there were sobs, my heart sank as if it had been strangled, and when the message ended I found myself gasping for breath. I wanted to pick up the phone, but my hand couldn't reach it, even though the woman's voice still haunted me. I knew I had to do this today, do it, but I wish she would wait a little. So she doesn't think I'm responding to her message out of weakness. I wandered around the house for a few more hours, which seemed to be empty. I looked around, and there were gaps everywhere where Connie's things had been. I called Sadie and asked a few guys to come over with a van to move her stuff. An hour later, my packed boxes and bags were piled in the back of the van, and as I watched it drive off to Connie's, I knew that soon my phone would ring, because she's picking up her things and realizing she messed up and it's going to upset her. It's a one-way trip. The phone rings again. It's Terry. Connie's stuff arrived. Just wanted to let you know we've accepted it. The guys apparently left most of it at the warehouse. Thanks. So we only have the things you marked as personal. Connie is still in shock. I know she called you before. Can you talk to her or call her back later? Put Terry on the phone and get this over with. I said, my voice full of frustration. I waited a few seconds before I heard her voice. Hello. A weak voice sounded in my ear. Connie. Oh my God. I'm sorry. I never thought you'd get caught. I said, sarcastically. She began to say, forget it, Connie, now you finally know the answers to all those questions you never even thought to ask yourself while you were playing along with that scumbag. I interrupted my angry rant. She tried again. Do you really think you can tell me what will make everything okay? Then go ahead, I'm all ears, I said, ironically. Can I come home and talk to you? She pleaded, her voice full of despair. Why, Connie, explain, how sorry you are for trying to fix the mess you've made. No, you stay where you are. I'll tell you when and where I'll talk to you, but you're not setting foot in this house until I'm ready, I answered coldly. I need to see you, I need to explain, she insisted. You should think about that before you decide to destroy everything we have. I'll call you when I'm ready. Until then, don't try to contact me. Do you understand? Yes, came the firm reply. I understand, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Goodbye, Connie, I said, ending the call. I leaned back, feeling a mixture of anger and relief. There was a long way to go ahead, but for now I needed to clear my head and prepare for the next step. I thought for a few seconds, trying to regain control of my emotions. Her voice was distracting me, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, as if it wanted to break free. My breathing was rapid, and my brain was trying to control it. Finally I took a deep breath. Tonight at 7 o'clock, whether you come or not, it's the same to me. This is the only chance, and it's only valid until 7:05. I'll listen, but I won't promise anything. I heard her sigh, and then the conversation ended. I sat there, listening to the sound of her voice that remained in my memory, feeling the pain in it, and wondering if she could feel my pain. I sat down to reflect on my marriage and how happy I thought we were. We had certainly had our ups and downs, but I was sure we were happy. I had never doubted it before, but that didn't mean she hadn't done it before. I was once again confused, trying to figure out what I was sure of, while the dark cloud that enveloped me represented everything I didn't know. The sound of the clock chiming in the hallway let me know it was past 6 o'clock. I listened to the clock and it was indeed 6:45. The woman who had broken my heart would be here soon, and I needed to control my emotions and prepare for the final act of our marriage. The doorbell interrupted my thoughts and woke me from the fog of self-pity. I tried not to dwell on the future, but the emotion of self-pity crept back up. I began to ask myself over and over again, why now? Free from gloomy thoughts, I walked towards the door and pushed it open. There she stood, the first time I had seen her since that night at the hotel. Her hair, though neatly combed, was pulled back, making her face look rather haggard. Little makeup accentuated her pale complexion. Her shoulders seemed to slump as she entered the hall. I followed her, noticing how a few days could bring about such a change. Just like her, you are caught off guard. I watched her as she circled the living room, breathing heavily, then suppressed a sob. She noticed the empty spaces on the walls and in the room where photos and mementos once hung. She covered her mouth with her hand and looked at me with tears in her eyes. It's all gone. I said coldly. If you look at the rest of the house, you'll see there are many empty places. I paused before continuing. She looked at me again, tears rolling down her cheeks. I didn't expect it, but I did hope it would happen. I hadn't considered it. Connie's voice trembled with regret. I know, but this is the result of your infidelity, your unfaithfulness, your affair with another man. It's all your fault. I hope you're satisfied. My words pierced her heart like a knife, every word deeply wounded her. She sat on the sofa. I poured her a strong glass of vodka and tonic water and handed it to her. I was expressionless. She took a sip, looked at me, and took a big gulp. I leaned back in my chair and looked at her. Okay, Connie, tell me what you're thinking. I said, my tone cold and detached. I'm sorry, S. I couldn't help it. I got deeper and deeper, and then I got addicted. She admitted it, tears welling in her eyes. Connie, you know, I talked to Terry and Phil, and they filled in the gaps in my knowledge. I know what, where, and with whom. I just don't know why. I said, my voice, controlling the anger, I can't answer that question, it's too new and exciting, I think I've been cheated on by him." She admitted she was ashamed. "But you had a lot of fun with him, not once or twice, but for weeks on end," I said, feeling the anger build again. I took a sip and breathed deeply a few times to try to stay calm. She looked down at her feet. "I know I can't justify myself. I was wrong. Is there any way we can get through this?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper, and I avoided the question. "What about Tony? What happened to him? What about the pervert?" I demanded. Connie fidgeted, finally looking up at me, her eyes fixed on mine, defiant, as she tried to think of something to say. "We were caught that night at the hotel. There were people there. I think there were 5 or 6 of them, but Tony was just taken away in a minute. He was there and then he was gone." "You arranged it?" she asked, her voice quavering. I stared at her again, sipping my drink and ignoring her questions. I wondered if she realized that I had been in front of her that night before she blacked out. "It was awful," she continued, her voice breaking. "They took him away, he disappeared, and then they tied me up, the man holding a weapon to my head. I know he pulled the trigger, but at that moment, I lost consciousness. I was terrified. I thought I was going to die. When I came to, I was alone." She continued, her voice choking up. She saw the smile on my face as I watched her tremble, her gaze locked on mine, and I asked mockingly, "What happened to your lover?" "Don't call him that, he's not my lover." "Yes, I know I slept with him, but I don't feel anything for him." "I love you, only you," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "You love me so much, but you fooled around with this pervert for weeks." I spat in her face. She leaned against me. I suddenly exploded with anger. "So tell me why I should give you time, because you have proven yourself to be a liar and a cheat. How do I know that everything you say is true? How can you expect me to believe a single word you say? Tell me," I demanded, tears streaming down her face, because for the first time she felt my anger. "So have you been communicating with your lover?" I asked her again, emphasizing the word lover, to make her feel uncomfortable and provoke her. I wanted her to suffer as she had. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I had no news of him at all, just that he was in some hospital. Phil had only said that. I didn't want to hear anything more about him. He had ruined my life. I wanted him dead." "Okay, I totally agree." I sniggered a little, looking at her. She must have been so angry, because she had been caught and would have to deal with the consequences herself. She screwed up and now she's getting what she deserves. We're silent for a few minutes, looking at each other, waiting for the right moment. I take my time, carefully releasing the anger that has built up for so long. I want to slap her, but I have to stay calm. She circles the living room, looking for something to distract her. She sighs when she notices that our wedding photo is missing from the mantelpiece. She stares at the empty space, and I meet her gaze, glance at the dent in the wall and answer her unspoken question. She covers her mouth, got up and looked at every empty space in the room. I watched her as she absorbed the missing memories. Every move she made seemed to disappear from the first floor. She returned to the sofa, everything was empty. Was there really no chance? Frustration shone in her eyes. I took a deep breath. "Connie, I love you more than anything. What you've done breaks my heart. Staying with that idiot is disrespectful to me, and a total disregard for my feelings and our friends. You were seen with him in public. You didn't need to tell me it was just sex, or that you didn't want to hurt me. You did, and now you're going to pay the price. Your lover has already started to pay for his actions, and rightly so. I will destroy him, but slowly. I will destroy you, just as you destroyed the feelings we had for each other. Connie, we're over. Now I'm sorry that I didn't get any word from you to change my mind, so if you sign the divorce papers, we can go on with our lives. I don't want to see you or hear from you again. I'm through with you. Get out of my house, you cheating bitch." She sat there shocked. My words shocked her. She had really screwed up, but now I didn't care about her. My anger would help me deal with her. She gathered herself together, got up and left. I followed her to the door, and when she opened the car door, she looked back at me and muttered an apology. I raised my hand, mimicking a weapon, and watched the guilty expression on her face. Click, she screamed, almost collapsing, and then climbed into the car. I closed the door and watched her leave.